Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for joining me today on our second episode of the podcast. I recently picked up a new mic, so hopefully the upgrade will improve your listening experience. I spent most of the day today shed hunting. I only found one single tine. It was probably 3 or 4 years old. Found it in a creek wash. I did find a lot of parts, but I just don't think the deer are dropping here in Colorado yet, especially east of the Rockies. Anyway, I hope you were able to go on an adventure today or enjoy some time outdoors in some capacity, especially if you had as nice a weather as we did here. It was about 65 degrees and sunny today, which is pretty nice for the middle of February. Alright, so anyway, we're going to go ahead and dive into the episode, but before I start, I want to throw up a quick disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything to you. If you find yourself in need of medical attention, please seek out a doctor. The views on this show are mine. If you don't agree with them, I would encourage you to have a civil discussion like adults and post reliable sources backing up your claims if you do make claims. Otherwise, it's my show, so I get to talk about whatever the hell I want, and I really don't care if it offends or bothers you. Alright. So on today's episode, we're going to discuss wilderness survival and preparedness. We could have countless hours on this topic. However, this is ultimately going to end up being a multi-part episode, and we're going to aim on highlighting what I feel are the most critical tools and tasks to have when you are embarking on a trip into the wild, whether it's for day use or ultralight backpacking out into the wilderness and camping out for days or weeks on end. So, what are the top things you're going to need while in the wild? So, you should probably look to evaluate many factors, including the current and future weather conditions, terrain, your party's physical conditioning, and any limiting factors. This is especially important if you're going out with multiple people. One person can make a situation very dangerous or life-threatening. So, if you don't have the right conditioning, probably work up to it. Rome wasn't built in a day. You should also look at the duration of your trip and options for rescue may the need arise. Furthermore, you should always let someone know where you are going, how long you will be gone, who you're going with, when you will return, and what to do if you don't return by set date and time. So in the military, this is a 5-point contingency plan referred to as GOTWA. Make sure you have a GOTWA. I don't like people knowing what I'm doing or where I'm going, but nonetheless, I still provide it because if I don't and I go out and something happens to me, how are they going to know where to search or where to come pick you up at, etc. So my number one rule is to always expect the unexpected. This is especially going to be important if you're venturing out into mountainous or desert environments. Temperatures could swing like 75 degrees within a couple hours, and if you head out with a pair of shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt, you're probably going to be very uncomfortable or even run the risk of hypothermia or death. So how do I combat this problem? Well, I bring multiple layers with me within my pack to keep my body either warm or cool enough for what may be to come. If I head out on a sunny day and let's say it's 75 degrees, I'm still going to pack enough snivel gear to be comfortably warm at near zero temperatures and vice versa. So if I'm heading out and it's 0 degrees, I'm going to have a few layers on me. I'm not going to overbundle to where I start sweating and end up getting cold and chilled because of it, but it's always better to add a layer than it is to strip a layer, in my opinion. You're always going to want to carry a first aid or survival kit at all times, whether it's in your pack, attached to it, or worn separately. In my survival kit, I'm always going to carry at least 2 tourniquets. That's if I'm going out by myself. I'm going to have gauze, tape, scissors, some extra 550 cord, a chest seal or a bag that I can use as a chest seal with the tape, a reflective blanket, or multiple, some way to purify water. If you are going to bring a survival kit, which you should, if you're not going to, you don't have any business going out, you can pack your survival kit in a metal container that could also double as a means to purify water via boiling it by fire. I would include a couple forms of signaling items, such as a reflective panel via 17 panel, they're also referred to as via 17, or a mirror, for example. You could also use fire as a signal. Just make sure you're being responsible, and that if you are building a fire for signal or other purposes, that you contain it and you completely extinguish it if you're not going to be able to attend it. I'm also going to include at least 2 ways to start a fire. So one could be flint, another could be lighter or waterproof matches. Never rely on only having one method. If you don't have a compass, you shouldn't be out in the wild, so get a compass and have a good map. Also, it helps to have a general understanding of land navigation skills and how to read a map, especially key terrain features. Don't rely on your phone or offline maps solely. That's a recipe for disaster. I'm also going to bring fishing line, a few hooks, sutures, and probably the most uncommon thing I'm going to bring in my survival kit is going to be sugar. And you're probably like, sugar? Why sugar? Well, so sugar can be used to help stop bleeding. So when sugar comes in contact with blood, it's going to form a paste, and it will basically help the cut or the wound clot more quickly. And there's also some antibacterial properties. So I would suggest filling a small bottle or a sack with sugar and include it into your first aid or survival packing list. If you're going out with multiple people, you're going to need to be sure that you're bringing enough supplies for the number of people that are in your party. Let's say if I were to go out with half a dozen people, 2 tourniquets isn't going to do me very much good should disaster strike. So use common sense and make sure if you use an item, you replace it before your next outing. There's many other items that you could include in your survival kit, like burn gels, antihistamines, eye drops, etc., etc. But the things that I mentioned previously are what I personally find critical in a packing list. You'll be alright without moleskin. Like if you were to develop a blister, I'm more worried about things that can kill me, not things that are going to make me uncomfortable. Alright, so you have your survival kit and you're ready to go on an adventure. Your 3 most important things in a wilderness or survival setting are water, shelter, and fire if it's cold out. Meaning the very first 2 things I'm going to do is look for a setting near water, yet out of any possible floodplain, and look to set up shelter. Huge bonus point would be to make sure that you're not setting up near dead trees, and if you're in a high wind area, I'm going to set up even further from trees. Even a perfectly live, healthy tree, if you get into a situation where you have 60 plus mile an hour winds, it can easily uproot that tree, especially if it's on the side of a mountain where erosion is very highly possible. So don't build your shelter near trees. So your shelter could be a tarp, it could be a tent, or you could build like a little lean-to out of logs and brush. However, just make sure that your shelter is going to protect you from 3 things: wind, rain, and cold. You need to make sure that you have some protection from the ground. Trust me, if you've never slept on the ground in sub-zero temps, it is not fun at all. I would definitely not recommend it. So you could either bring along an inflatable mat, or you could just use things from your surroundings like pine needles, branches, corn stalks if you're near a farm field. Whatever you can find to provide an extra layer of insulation between your body and the ground is going to be very, very, very critical. So also be sure to build your shelter small to afford some insulation, and make sure that you have room for ventilation, especially if you're going to build a fire within your shelter, you need a way to ventilate, and if you don't, you're just gonna suffocate. um, so when it comes to water, I would suggest bringing as much as you can comfortably carry with you. Um, like I mentioned before, you can put your survival kit in a metal container that could double as a method to boil or purify it in. I would strongly suggest doing so, but regardless, you should always have another method like purification tablets or filters. So there's a rule of 3 in survival, and people die in 3 minutes without air. You die in 3 hours without warmth or shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Obviously, this is going to vary on your environment, but keep this in mind when you're going out in the wild. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without warmth or shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So now that you know the 3 most important factors of survival, remember, whatever happens, to stay calm in all situations. If you find yourself injured or lost, stay put. If you provided a thorough gatwa, help will be coming to you. If you failed to provide a gatwa, I damn sure hope that you listened to the part about bringing a compass and a map. If you didn't do either of those, then travel towards a roadway or a populated area, and you might get lucky and somebody might pick you up. So I'm going to try and keep this pretty short and sweet. This is going to be a multi-part, so 10 to 15 minutes is about what I'm looking to achieve. So on the next part of this episode, we are going to discuss finding food from means of animals and plants, extra tools you may find useful to acquire and include in your pack, and also reducing weight of your pack, especially being in the military when we go on ruck marches. So many people bring so much unnecessary weight with them, and trust me, if you're going out and hiking for tens and tens of miles on end, that extra 3 or 4 pounds can be a big deal. So we're going to discuss some useful ways that you can reduce the weight of your pack while still maintaining the integrity. And yeah, so that's pretty much about all I have for this first part. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this multi-part episode. If you did, please remember to leave a like and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope to have earned your subscription today. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, no cool shit ever happened with I was sitting on my couch. So let's get out there and enjoy life. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, God bless.